Well, good morning. I'm Andy Ratcliffe. I'm with the 1108th TASMG, one of 4 sites for the Army National Guard. We're located in Gulfport, Mississippi. We support the lower southeast, 9 states to include Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. Got about 265 full-time employees. Our MTO strength for the actual, for those of you familiar with the Army National Guard, we have soldiers, citizen soldiers they are called. They come in once a week, or 1 week in a month, or 2 weeks in the summer. And they do their MOS training mission and whatnot. So that strength right there is about 487. So what do we do? All right, essentially within the levels of maintenance in the Army, and again, we support just the Army National Guard. Okay, the active duty Army has their own method of support. But we do what is called intermediate level and limited depot level maintenance. They're located throughout the southeast, do major overhaul, repair of components, painting, a lot of special projects. We classify parts, all in support of the customer, the flying customers out there in the field. Major airframe repair, overhaul. We have a full complement of back shops from armament, electronics, battery, sheet metal, blade, you name it, engine shop. Pretty much everything on a helicopter that can be fixed. We can tear it down, we can fix it. So, why am I here today? Well, about 1.5 years ago, we got a new commander and came in, and very aggressive man, Colonel Stanbridge, so he couldn't be here this week, and tag, Ratcliffe, you're it. But we kind of realized that, hey, we have a challenge. All right, our National Guard Bureau, who we kind of work directly for, they told us, guess what, guys? We want you to go out and improve fleet readiness throughout your region. Because the DA standard, the Department of Army standard for FMC rate, or fully mission capable rate, is 75%. The National Guard as a whole is not achieving it. So we want you TASMs to go out there and fix it. So we said to ourselves, well, how are we going to do this? Right? It's a big challenge, right? So what do you want us to do, National Guard Bureau? And they said, we want you to go out and achieve a 5% increase in your region next year. We're like, okay, 5%, how are we going to measure that? We started talking, started discussing. Oh, and by the way, in the area that everyone knows about fiscal constraints, budgetary constraints, they're slashing our budget. So in the past 2 years, or 2 fiscal years, our budget has been reduced by 20%. So they wanted us to increase readiness. We have less money. Oh, guess what? Go back one. We had fewer people. We had a reduction in workforce by 19%. So you want me to do more with less money and less people. How many, is that a common theme in the room? Yes, we're all kind of familiar with that? All right, so again, we got together, started talking. We tried different methods in the past, but we knew something had to change. So we determined, hey, we had a business need. So we went outside the force and worked with Realizations. They came in and they taught us some training on CCPM. We're like, what is this CCPM stuff, Is that lean? Is that Six Sigma? We don't know. And they said, no, it's critical chain project management. Which, from talking to you guys and gals in the room, from last night, a lot of you are already doing this, have been doing it for quite a few years, which makes me realize we are way behind the power curve. But again, we're making a step in the right direction. We've implemented it. And thus far, over the past year, we increased our readiness by 18%. Like, wow, must work, right? Maybe it was really worth paying those guys. But anyway, and I actually owe it all to Chris. Chris Timmer is a great trainer, and so is Barry. He's back in the room somewhere as well. But great guys that came in. They taught us some philosophies, and our guys, you have to understand, we have people that have grown up in the TASMG back when it was called an AVCRAD, and they've been there for 30 plus years. And they are set in their ways. Sound familiar? Well, by God, this is how we've done it for 30 years, and you want me to change? Why? It's working now. We're like, well, time out. So our goal to them, our challenge to them was, we need you to keep an open mind, right? We need you to think outside the box, that cliche out there, think upside, down, around, inside the box, whatever, but keep an open mind. Embrace this philosophy, this change, because everybody's resistant toward change, right? And we said, let's just see what they have to say and see how it works. And our biggest naysayers, there was 2 of them in our hangar. And Billy, he's in the back of the room. He knows who I'm talking about. But they are now our biggest advocates, all right? So we know that the process does work. All right, so couple of results here. Not only did we increase readiness by 18%, but our completion, our throughput, because again, Chris, he taught us a lot of terminology that we were not familiar with. WIP, throughput, cycle time, all these good things, right? You guys and gals know what I'm talking about. So you can see 42 aircraft was our baseline for FY13. In FY14, we hit 60 aircraft in the hangar. So obviously we had about a 43% improvement. Our cycle time, all right, encounter days, average aircraft in the past in FY13 was 98 days, right? We have customers out there screaming at us, why is my aircraft not ready? And we had a multitude of excuses. Well, we don't have parts, we don't have people, all these issues. Well, guess what? Now we're turning them in approximately about 40 days per aircraft. So how do we do this? All right, this may look familiar for those of you that do CCPM. Again, so we determined we had a need, and that was our business need, and through our training and stuff, we learned how to increase our aircraft throughput and shorten the delivery cycle time. And the biggest takeaway that I remember that Chris taught us was 3 concepts, right? One, these are probably familiar for most of you out here, is max load your aircraft, right? With the maximum number of people that you can possibly put on it. If the president calls you today and says, I need this aircraft tomorrow for a high-level mission, what are you going to do? And you've got 2 people on it, well, you can put 8, then why not put 8? So max load the aircraft. Also, issue support, second principle. Because I like principles. I'm kind of a gray area guy. I'm not really black and white. But principles are good to live by. So issue support when needed. So going to the mechanics, the aircraft leads, and say, what can I do for you to help you out? And he says, hey, I need another guy. Okay, got it. Hey, I need some parts. Got it. Okay, so issuing the support throughout the day. And the third principle, the biggest takeaway, was full kit. Because the principle of never start a project until you have all the parts, the pieces, the work orders, all that stuff in place before you start it. We've been violating that principle forever, for 30 years plus. You know, because if a customer called us and they said, hey, TASM, I've got an aircraft that's broke or it needs a phase inspection, can you help me out? We could not say no. Our biggest challenge out there in the field was that we could not say no. We were programmed to say yes. So we say, yeah, sure, send it on down. We'll take a look at it. We'll get it back to you in about 90 days or so. Well, guess what happens around 80 days? Sorry, customer, your aircraft's not ready. We don't have the parts, or I'm short on manpower. Does this sound familiar? Right? So our estimated completion dates were just out the window. So we knew that we had to reduce our WIP, one thing, because in the past, I was under the impression when I kind of started working at the TASMG that the more aircraft in work, the better. I mean, I look out there, I saw 20 plus aircraft. I'm like, wow, business is good, right? But at the same time, when you're only working the aircraft with 1 to 2 people on each aircraft, and sometimes an aircraft may not have anybody, it causes those delays. So by reducing the WIP, or our work in process, down to a more manageable level, we could therefore increase our max loading. We could put more people on the aircraft. We could reduce those cycle times, and we could increase our throughput, which we saw that it actually did work. Chris also taught us how to pipeline. Does that sound familiar for those of you out there? It's scheduling, right? He showed us a little software program called Concerto. Y'all are familiar with that as well. Gave us some training on it, and not without a lot of challenges, because it's kind of a complicated program for us down in Mississippi. You know, we know how to turn the computer on and off. But it's worked out very well. We have pipelining exercises once a week, and we actually can see what the impact of our projects are going to be on our capacity. Because another principle that he taught us was, don't allow your workload to exceed your capacity. We had been violating that principle for a long time as well, because with a reduced workforce and tons of projects, we just couldn't work them. But now we can. So you see right there, aggressive project plan. Let me tell you, it was very aggressive. We were like, you want us to do what? 24 days? Are you kidding me? You know, that's going to take 6 months. Concerto is very aggressive, right? But it forced us to take a very hard look at how we're doing our processes and how we're managing our projects, and say, you know what, aggressive is good, you know, very good. Also, it assigned buffers for us, which was kind of like a new thing for us, you know, again, terminology. So now when we program a project to come in, and it's there for a set number of days, we have an estimated completion date that we share with the customers, right? It's a contract date, but guess what? We don't share that date internally, because everybody knows, right? if I give you, my mechanic, right, I give you 30 days to fix this little widget, how long are you going to take?
30 plus.
You're going to take 30 plus, exactly. Because what's going to happen? You're going to come up with a reason why it's not done. So going back to the ECD, we don't share that internally with our mechanics. That is close hold information. That's what we call our internal ECD. We have the external ECD that we share with the customer. It's a contract. It's a new thing we started about 2 years ago. And so we share with the customer, hey, we estimate it's going to take X amount of days. You bring in the aircraft here for X mod, X repair. But however, we think that we're going to get it back to you sooner than that. But it's in writing. Both parties agree upon what's to be done. As long as we don't change that, everything is good. Because one thing we've found, actually recently, is that the pipeline exercises do work if you stick to them. But if you pipeline an aircraft for a certain mod, and guess what, the customer calls and say, hey, I want to change that. And we say yes, it throws everything off kilter. So for those of you that are thinking about doing CCPM or are currently doing it, that's my takeaway right there is stick to your plan. Concerto also taught us how to task our priorities, right? Everybody understands how you have a priority list. Well, for us, we have 23 customers, a little over 300 aircraft. Everyone is a priority, right, in their mind. So if you put yourself in the customer's shoes, they say, I want my aircraft back because you told me it was going to be back. And they don't care about the other 22 facilities. They care about them. And that kind of makes sense. So we knew that we had to better prioritize. That's where the CCPM was really good for us. The Concerto has really allowed us to take a close focus on what is a priority. We see how the priorities can change each day based on what tasks were completed the day prior. All right, that makes sense. Identify and resolve blocking issues. All right, so how did we do that? Well, we knew we had to change our process, our daily process. In the past, we kind of met once a week. We had a production control meeting. It took about an hour. We basically covered aircraft status update. We're all familiar with that, right? Hey, what's going on with tail number 751? Oh, it's awaiting a part. Well, when's that part due in? Oh, I don't know. I'll just go check. Sound familiar? Right? Oh, who's heard this one? We don't have the money. We don't have the budget to order the parts. Well, what does all that do? It extends the ECD, right? Call the customer up. Sorry, buddy, can't help you. Waiting on more money. So blocking issues. All these issues out there, we had to figure out a way of changing that. So what we did is we actually implemented a daily issue resolution meeting. So every morning now, we have a modified production control meeting. We come together and we talk about those issues. And it's not necessarily a status update meeting, although it sort of is, but we talk about what can be done to solve the project. You know, of course, applied with the full kitting. You know, those excuses about, oh, I don't have the parts, I don't have the money. 9 times out of 10, those issues are already resolved before the aircraft comes in, which is an ideal thing. Flexible resource pooling strategy. All right. Again, a lot of this terminology, it was all new to us. Chris has done a good job trying to teach me. But we had to learn flexible resourcing and flexible management. So, for example, throughout the day, our supervisors are walking around. And in the morning, you know, they've assigned out their projects to their aircraft leads. But throughout the day, they walk around, they go to the aircraft lead, and they say, hey, what do you need? Do you need an extra guy? Yeah, I could really use 2 extra guys because I am so busy right here. I'm so focused. I'm not going to be able to get my task list done today. Can you give me 2 extra people? So the whole flexible scheduling for us was like, yes, we will find you extra help. So we go down based on the priority list. Supervisor pulls somebody off an aircraft that's not necessarily a high priority at the time, you know, and max loads that aircraft again throughout the day based on the needs. Full kit works. So we learned how to reduce resource conflicts. Okay, the MIP, the WIP. 14 to 15, that's being very nice. At times we had up to 20 to 22 aircraft in work in the hangar. You know, with the workforce that we have, that was unmanageable. It was chaotic, okay? So by reducing our WIP, 7 to 9, it was a lot more manageable. We're like, wow. Guess what happens when you reduce the WIP? The hangar is neater. People don't cut corners as much, all right? They're actually doing maintenance by the book. They're using the book, you know, while they do maintenance. They do the write-ups after they complete the task. All these things that they're supposed to do, all right? People are happier for the most part. And guess what? Throughput goes up because we can work more efficiently. So the pipeline slotting, I talked about that our mindset. We changed our mindset. And it was not without challenges, but it has worked. Once a week, we have the pipelining meeting. We have representatives from production control, from maintenance. They sit in. And who's familiar with Little's Law? Right? That was something new that we learned. Okay? So we know what our capacity, is, and we know based on Little's Law what our WIP should be. And we know based on the pipeline, we can stagger these projects out because, just because we work on, Blackhawks, Apaches, and Chinooks, and we do different levels of maintenance with each and every aircraft, if we do too many of the same type projects in a row, it's going to decrease our capacity. So we learned throughout the pipeline that, hey, if I'm going to do, let's say, 2 phases, well, then I guess what? I need to throw a mod in there or a different type of project. Therefore, I won't reduce my capacity too much. So we had to learn to kind of stagger that. Max loading. This is a constant challenge for us. Again, everybody's a priority out there in the field. They're all calling and say, hey, I've got this mission with the Special Forces coming up for annual training. I really need my aircraft back. You hear all kinds of excuses about why they need it, why they're a priority. And if you give into that, if you say yes, no problem, guess what happens? You spread your resources too thin, and then what happens? The WIP starts to go back up, so it's like a revolving door. Cycle time. It's worked. I mean, it's a very big success story for us. We're very, very happy with it. So we use a buffer system, obviously, to drive the priorities. And again, every morning when we meet, everybody understands what is the priority and what may be priority number 1 today. Tomorrow is number 2, based on the amount of tasks that we're completing. So our daily process, I kind of talked about this, and it may be a little hard to see, but essentially every morning, right, when the supervisors show up, they basically print out their concerto task for that aircraft for the day. Okay? And so they know what needs to be done, based on what concerto is kind of telling them. So they issue out, of course they're taking accountability. They know who's on sick leave, who's on annual leave, who do I have, who is my capacity for today, my workforce. And then they assign out those task lists to the aircraft leads. Then they come to us about 7:30. We have our issue resolution meeting. We talk about those issues. It keeps a very good, it keeps it high in everybody's mind about what is the focus, what is the priority. Something new that we kind of started doing as well that Chris taught us was to do a walk around throughout the day. Because what happens in a managerial type role, you have to go to meetings, you're on teleconferences. For us, we have National Guard unit issues that kind of pop up throughout the week. And I was telling a gentleman earlier, because we're kind of a unique facility, we are actually in the National Guard, but Monday through Friday, we are a facility of federal technicians, all right, and state employees and contractors. Think of it like working for Walmart or UPS. We have that role to keep up with. Well, because we wear the uniform, some people don't really understand the fact that we're a facility. So they say, well, you know what, you're in the military, you need to accomplish this type of training and get ready for drill, or we need this operations order. So we're constantly getting pulled in all sorts of directions, like a ratchet. Just as you start going, you get pulled back, right? You start the day off at A, trying to get to B, but you have to go to Z and Y first, and then you never make it to B until like 2 weeks from now. So all these different challenges throughout the day that we have to deal with, I'm sure it's a common theme throughout the room as well. So we didn't have time to do walk-arounds. We're like, what's a walk-around? Well, by walking around, it's a small group of people. It's a production control representative, a maintenance representative, some supervisors, a parts expediter, somebody who's tracking the parts that are on order for the aircraft. They walk around to each project throughout the day at 10:30. It's kind of become a common theme. When we first started it, the aircraft leads were like, what are you doing here? What do you want? You're interrupting me. I'm trying to work here. Well, we kind of had to change that philosophy, their mindset a little bit. And now they've come to expect it. And so they know every day about 10:30, we're going to walk around with a cup of coffee and talk to them and find out what the issues are. Because what may be a priority at 7:30 in the morning, by 10:30, some maintenance has been done. Maybe they've depopulated an aircraft, and guess what? They found a crack that was not forecast. Because everybody that works maintenance, especially in aviation, you understand unforeseen maintenance. Corrosion. You remove a panel, aircraft's from Puerto Rico, and you're like, they didn't wash this aircraft very good or do some very good CPC. So it's these unforeseen challenges that are going to pop up. The 10:30 walk around kind of helps identify that. Works out very well. Then again at 2:30 in the afternoon, they do another walk around, and the supervisors have a huddle, and they talk about what was accomplished throughout the day. So again, it keeps It keeps these projects high in their task, high in their minds as far as, being aggressive, trying to get the aircraft completed on time. And then at night, of course, Concerto does this little thing, runs some algorithms, spits out a new task list for us the next day. And then we get up and do it all over again. So here's a quick example of how we do full kitting. Again, it may be a little bit hard to see, but initially at the beginning, we know we have an aircraft coming in for a phase. We know there is a certain list of items that we're going to have to either A, inspect, or B, replace on a phase. So all those things are done ahead of time. 2 weeks prior to the aircraft actually even showing up, we work with the customer. We tell them, hey, there's a list of items that we need to full kit this aircraft to get ready for your project. So if it all works out very well, and the customers in the field, they've gotten used to it, they send us all this information, the historical records, the open faults report for the aircraft, the work order. All that paperwork is done. Our quality control shop can then analyze it. Production control can actually create the work order on our side. So everything's ready, so when the aircraft shows up, we may have to do an initial pre-phase test flight. Maybe that might take a day or two, but then the aircraft can go into work. Because the ideal, Norm is right, is what? Aircraft leaves, aircraft comes in. We haven't quite got there yet, but we're working towards it. So we full kit, aircraft comes in for induction. Of course, certain things have to get done. It may have to get washed, defueled, depopulation. There's other full kitting that's going on in the middle, for the back shop, because as components get pulled off the aircraft, they have to get farmed out to the back shops. The back shop has to analyze it and say, you know what, this is either fixable or not. If it's not fixable or we NERTS it, not repairable this station, we'll send it off. Do we have another one on the shelf? All these things we try to forecast those in advance to find out, keep a stockpile of parts so we don't have to spend a lot of time awaiting parts when they're ordered. Any MWOs, repairs are done while the aircraft is there. So another full kit point, and then of course the aircraft gets put back together, and then final maintenance operational checks, maintenance test flights as well. So some of the key lessons that we learned. Who's heard this one before? So is there any such thing as actual multitasking? Truthfully, no. You can do a whole bunch of things simultaneously, poorly, right? But you can't really multitask. You can only focus on one thing at a time. So we learned that if we reduce our multitasking, and we have, and not without challenges, but if we continue to reduce our multitasking throughout the day, everything flows. Focus on one thing at a time. I was actually reading an article, the CEO of Google. They were interviewing him and saying, well, how do you do this? How do you keep up with running such a large company as Google? And he says basically the same thing. He does not multitask. When he's talking to an individual, he's talking to that individual. He's not worrying about all the other list of items that he uses every day or that he has to accomplish. So he goes from one thing to another per time. He tries to focus his full attention. And it all happens. You come in the morning, right? You check your email. And you came in the morning, you got your cup of coffee, and you've got an idea in your head, or maybe you're a list person and you made a list of what you're going to do, and you want to accomplish that. But then if you open up your email, the plan goes out the window, right? Because you got an email from your boss or a customer. It's another issue. So what does that do? It distracts you, and so your list goes out the window. So again, it goes back to organization skills. Reduce your multitasking. Focus on one thing at a time. It works. So leadership. Again, this has to be driven from the top down. For those of you doing this right now, you've probably seen that as well. It was a total philosophy change, a paradigm change for us with our key leadership. We had their support. What we had to do is drive it from the top all the way down. So how did we do that? Well, we actually, through our training, and Chris, and Barry teaching us the classes, more like a train the trainer type class, we actually took those exercises and filtered it down to the lowest level. So our mechanics, our sheet metal, our artisans in the shops, even our supply techs, if you ask them now what is CCPM, 9 times out of 10 you'll get what the actual definition is. But they do understand why we're doing it, because if they don't understand why you're doing something, why you're changing the way you've done it for 30 years, what's going to happen? Resistance, right? So by giving them ownership about why we're doing it and letting them see the actual results has paid dividends. Now, is this something that we can just train them one time and be done with it? No. Obviously, it's an ongoing thing that we need to continue doing, and that's in process as we speak. Again, they will support the change as long as you explain to them why. Everybody's got kids, right? You tell your kid to do something. Why? Because I said so, that's why. Well, we kind of understand within our level of work, that doesn't always work, you know. You have to explain that logic to them. Everybody understands constraints. We always said it was parts, right? We can't finish this project because we don't have the parts, because we don't have the money, yada, yada, yada. It wasn't parts. If you full kit and you plan your projects ahead of time, you order the parts. Maybe if you don't have the money, you be creative and you have a network of parts expediters out there in the field and you say, hey, Mr. Customer, guess what? I need XY widget. Do you have one? Well, yes. Well, good. I've got one on order. Go ahead and give me yours. When mine comes in, I'll give it to you. All right? So you have to be kind of creative and problem solving like that. But our biggest constraint was, anybody guess? Multitasking. So we were trying to do too much at one time. Again, we started this project the week after Thanksgiving of 2013. All right, I had the training, started the core team. I was actually the core team lead at our facility as well, and we started implementing it. It's paid off, but we're not going to stop there. We're continuing to refine, work through the challenges, train our folks. We had Chris come back about 2 months ago, take us through some more training as well with Concerto, just to kind of reassess where we were, point out some challenges that we need to work on, some areas of improvement. So we always want to go farther, and look for better gains. This is something we've also done as well over the past year. Again, we have 23 facilities. Well, the TASM, or what used to be called an AVCRAD, highest level of maintenance within the National Guard, aside from Corpus Christi, right? Our customers out there didn't really know who we were or what we were doing. They just knew that when the aircraft was broke really hard and they couldn't fix it, they sent it to us and it stayed there forever. So they didn't like us. So we had to go out there and reestablish relationships. So we started doing facility visits with them, meeting with their leadership, instead of just a phone call or an email, which is so impersonal, meeting with them face to face. I think we can all agree that there's value in FaceTime. It's like coming here to this conference, meeting you individuals here. We're building a network of relationships. We can share ideas, a lot of good takeaways, and hopefully, that's why you have business cards, right? You give them out, call me, stay in touch. You can share ideas in the future. Hey, what are you doing that's working? What are some good takeaways? Hey, can I come visit you? I'd like to see how you do work orders because I really think our process is inefficient. That kind of thing, right? So we went out there with our customers and we shared with them why we were changing. And guess what? It's paid off dividends, right? Just reestablishing relationships. Some that had been burned, the bridges had been burned because they didn't like us anymore. And some of them still don't like us, but that's okay. At least now they know what we're doing, why we're doing it. So we communicated that with them. And it's not just a one-time shot, hey, I'm here this year, you'll never see me again. It's an ongoing process to go out and visit with those. And then it's not just the FaceTime. We still call them, we email them. And you don't just talk about maintenance either. You talk about the ball game and their kids. So it's just building those relationships with them. So yeah, we did that in 2014. All right. So our future capacity. I mentioned Little's Law a minute ago. Our unit, being a National Guard unit, was getting ready to deploy. All right, not the entire unit, but we have about a quarter of the authorized strength is actually going to leave out the door in a couple weeks to go overseas. All right. Well, that's going to cause a reduction in capacity for us because we're losing some of our full-time workforce. So we ran the calculations, kind of said, oh, right, guess what? We need to reduce our WIP because we're not going to be able to maintain the same throughput when we have this reduction in manpower. And then when they come back, guess what? We'll reevaluate it and increase our WIP, hopefully. Anyway, thank y'all for allowing me to get the talk.